Okay. I think we're good. We left off. I had to leave early last time, and so we're partially the way through Oligopoly 2. And basically, to recap, so in a oligopolistic market, which is somewhere in between a monopoly and a perfect competition, cooperative equilibria, so when all the firms are cooperating with each other, is preferable. It gives each firm higher profit than when they aren't cooperating in general. So why isn't a cartel, and a cartel being when they're all cooperating? Why isn't a cartel formed in every oligopolistic market? Basically, they can't trust each other, and there's a lot of incentive to cheat. And governments have tried to make it illegal as well. Yeah, that's so where was that roughly?
And we solved this monopoly problem last time. Remember when American was the only our
We weren't too far in.
rules and regulations.
Antitrust, right. Here we go.
And reached a deal. And their deal was that they would in a coordinated way jack up the oil charges.
Yeah.
And the oil charge went.
So this is good. He's going through examples of basically the anti-cartel laws not working, of ways that firms have gotten around the laws.
From $10 to $120 a ticket. And they agreed they wouldn't undercut the other persons because they weren't really oil charged at that point. They were just higher prices. Just an excuse that oil prices had gone up. And they basically said, look, we won't undercut each other. We'll have a cartel. The cartel, instead of coordinating on the explicit price to ticket, will coordinate on this bonus part of the price, something economists often call a shrouded attribute, an extra part of the price you don't pay attention to. Consumers won't notice as much because they're less price elastic to these sort of hidden parts of costs. And we won't undercut each other. We'll make a lot of money. So basically,
what did he say? We'll see.
A shrouded attribute, an extra part of the price you don't pay attention to. Consumers won't notice as much because they're less price elastic to these sort of hidden parts of costs. And we won't undercut each other. We'll make a lot of money. So basically, they got this deal that worked. But here's once again why economists think incentives matter. The lawyers for Virgin Airlines caught wind of what their executives had agreed to. And the lawyer said, you know what? If British Airways
and they betrayed them first.
ever tells what we're doing to the regulators, British Airways will get away with it and we'll be screwed. So what did they do? They went to the regulators because it's a repeated game with an and. They knew that at some point someone was going to cheat, so if someone's going to break it up, it might as well be them. They did. They went to the regulators, reported the scheme, got a slap on the wrist, and British Airways got an enormous fine. Virgin Airways paid nothing. British Airways paid $500 million. Okay? So this instability is not just mathematical, it's just generally a feature of why cooperation's hard. Cooperation requires trust and consistency, and that's hard between natural competitors. It's hard to make that happen. So that's, cartel instability. The law has helped, but here was something they were getting around the law. What broke it up was not the law. What broke it up was incentives. So economists trust incentives over the law.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, there's a third example which is quite interesting, which is sometimes cartels can operate in the open and get away with it. Let's talk about the National Football League, the NFL. The NFL is the most important football organization in America, the most profitable, important football organization in America. Football's the most profitable sport in the country. Advertising is incredibly valuable during football games, increasingly so because now we all watch. It's the one place in the world you don't stream. So we stream everything we watch now, so we don't have ads. You can't stream sports. So sports advertising has gone through the roof because advertising in other contexts is less valuable. Used to be you could advertise everywhere. Now you can't. It's really just sports is the last place people watch ads. So it's incredibly valuable. Now, the NFL is 32 teams, essentially 32 businesses competing in a literal sense with each other. So and there's a huge incentive to collude. Let's take the New York Giants and the New York Jets, and the New Jersey Giant, New York Jets, but it's the same market. Let's say that let's say the TV station says, the major TV station says, look, we're going to broadcast whichever team gives us the better deal. Well, the Giants and Jets will have to compete with each other, give the TV station a better deal. But let's say we'll agree not to do that. We'll just tell the TV station, this is our price. It's basically instead of $1 billion, it'll be $2 billion. We each have $2 billion, either take it or leave it. And TV station ended up broadcasting both, or maybe one TV station takes one, another TV station takes another. Mm-hmm. And more generally, what the NFL does is they only sell the TV rights for the league. They don't sell TV rights for individual teams.
For the league. Oh, so... Oh, okay. Okay, and then the TV rights are the profits from the TV rights are split between the 32 business firms.
So individual teams do not sell their TV rights, which could lead to competition. The league just sells the TV rights, which causes a cartel. Essentially, they're saying if you want to broadcast football, you got to come to us, and we're going to charge a super high price. As a result, quite frankly, watching football is a bit of a pain in the ass at this point. So you've got network TV, which if the local team is on, you can only watch the local team. Otherwise, there may be one other game on. You've got Sunday Night Football, which is on network TV. You've got Thursday Night Football, which I think is on Amazon or ESPN. Amazon, Thursday night? Who's got Thursday Night Football? Amazon. You've got Sunday Morning Football from London, which is ESPN+. Then you can do what I did and pony up $350 to buy Sunday Ticket. If you like an out-of-town team and want to watch your team, which lets you watch any game you want on Sunday, except the Sunday morning games where you still have to buy ESPN+, as I learned much to my chagrin. So it's incredibly expensive to watch football. If you want to see all the football games, it costs you a pretty penny. Why? Because the league has colluded and set up a structure where basically firms can't undercut each other. Otherwise, firms would say, look, a lot of people want to watch my team. I'm going to go strike a separate deal. Indeed, in 1957, the Supreme Court, 1957, even before I was born, that's how long ago it was, the Supreme Court ruled that this was anti-competitive and they couldn't do it. They did, yet it's still done, and the NFL will make $40 billion this year off their collusive cartel. Why? Because Congress stepped in and said, well, we're going to grant them an antitrust exemption. We're going to say football is such of a national important priority that we're going to actually exempt football from our nation's antitrust laws. So I said last time in my previous lecture, I'd prove to you that Congress cares more about football than economics. Okay? They cared more about the football league than actually making football affordable for us to watch. So by granting them an antitrust exemption, they allowed them to collude and have this one league that makes it incredibly expensive to watch football. Okay? Questions about that? One other fun example. We're going to discuss international trade in a few lectures. It's a really interesting topic. We'll spend some time on it. But the bottom line is, economists generally feel free international trade is a good thing. We'll come back to subtleties, but roughly speaking, we believe free international trade is a good thing. And for years, that was reflected in the views of the Republican Party. The Republican Party was a party of free trade. Democrats were the party of less free trade. Okay, that's changed over time, but that was the traditional. When I was a kid, there was the free trade party and the less free trade party. Okay? Ronald Reagan, you don't get more Republican than Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan in 1981 faced a problem, which is Japan was starting to make cars that Americans like more than American-made cars, and Japan was killing us in the car market. Americans were buying Japanese cars instead of American cars, and the U.S. auto manufacturers were mad. They said, you should limit how many Japanese cars come in. And Reagan said, I'm a free trade Republican. I can't do that. Or at least I can't appear to be doing that. So what did they do? They said, I'll tell you what. We're going to negotiate a deal we're going to call a voluntary export restraint, a VER. We're going to say to Japan, look, you can do what you want, okay? But we're going to ask you to limit how many cars you sell in America. We're going to say, let's say you're selling 2 million cars a year. We're going to ask you to limit to 1.5 million a year. We're not telling you. I'm free trade. We're just asking you. Why did Japan agree? Why did Japanese automakers agree to reduce how many cars they sell in America?
Well, there would have been some implied benefit in some other area, or maybe they offered. Maybe the US said, well, if you sell it if you only sell 1.5, or if you meet our, the VER, maybe we'll offer you a higher price, or.
It's not geopolitics, it's economics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially the US cartelized the Japanese auto industry. We basically said, we won't let you compete your price down. Remember I talked about government can fix monopoly by regulating a low price? This is government regulating a high price. Regulating.
Okay, so instead of forcing. Well, I mean, you wouldn't even have to. Why would you if you were going to? If the U.S. government was going to say, we're going to force Japanese cars to be sold at a minimum price. At a some high price, some higher than normal price, then, well, I guess that's the threat. Well, I mean, but why would I guess I'm thinking why would the U.S. government have to offer a VER when they could just set the price higher and forcibly increase the price that Japanese cars are sold until the Japanese firms self-regulate their supply because it's no longer as profitable. To however many units the U.S. government wants them to sell, say it's 1.5 mil to down from 2 mil. Was that too simplistic? But I guess.
A low quantity. So basically, the Japanese said, sure, you're basically, our companies, we the companies would love to compete less. We just can't do it. So you are basically enforcing cartelization on us. You're enforcing the fact we can't drive the price down of our cars. Thank you very much. The estimates are that as a result of this deal, the average Japanese car price in the U.S. rose by 14%. And U.S. consumers, the best estimates are, lost $3 billion in consumer surplus for the fact they couldn't buy cheap Japanese cars they wanted. So these are all examples of different ways cartelization can happen. It's hard. Governments can play both a constructive and destructive role. Okay? Questions about any of that? Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to do a little comparison.
Offer. That's my question. I'm not sure. Maybe the answer is simply it it sort of allows the firms to, because like businesses like stability, predictability in general, right? And so like suppose the firms weren't told that, hey, we're going to restrict the price until, like, if the supply isn't capped at, say, 1.5 million cars, right? Then the firms might, if they weren't told that, then the firms might feel a lot more uncertain about the US market. Maybe, and that's probably a bad thing in general. Whereas if you communicate that, if you communicate this to them, then maybe it communicates to them that that it communicates like the reasoning, or like it allows Japanese firms to be a lot more confident about how like the price is going to work, because like if they weren't communicated this, and the US just suddenly started raising the minimum price, enforcing a minimum price to be for Japanese cars to be sold in the US, that would be kind of scary, right? Because you don't know when it might end. You don't know what their target is. But if you know what their target is, then maybe you can like change. You can, as a Japanese firm, you could like change how your business works, or like you can change how much you're producing to just immediately target that 1.5 million, instead of having to like constantly shift and be uncertain about what the US is going to do, which is hilarious to say now, but
Comparison between the models. Let's compare the
Anyway,
models. We've now covered 3 models. We've covered perfect competition,
yeah.
monopoly, and oligopoly, at least the Carnot case. And once again, I've said this a million times, I'm sorry to bore you, but the Carnot case is the very tip of the iceberg. There's a million other interesting cases you can learn about in 1412. Okay? Let's look at what each of these 3 cases imply. So we have monopoly.
Let me make a little table for this. Insert table. Oops.
Monopoly. We have perfect competition. I'm sorry, we have oligopoly, by which we mean Carnot.
Move it.
And then we have perfect competition. Okay? Let's see what
I'll
these
just set it up like he's set his up. Boom, boom.
these imply for the quantity produced and what they.
Okay, down 1. Whoops. Please. Thank you. Big Q.
Imply for profits per firm. Okay? Well,
How do I do latex again? Is it? Oh, that's right. It's this. That? Yeah. Whoops. Per firm. That? Yeah.
we know that if they monopolize the market quantity.
Well, if they monopolize, I should be able to fill this in from memory of. So if they monopolize, big Q decreases. Well, big Q is less than decreases in comparison to perfect competition, because if a monopoly was to produce as much as a perfect competition, there would be a poisoning effect on all of the previous poisoning effect of the price of all the previous units. So it's less than perfect competition, less than PC. Why is it red? Why was it what? Why is it turning red? Okay, whatever. Oligopoly, less than PC, but well, less than oligopoly, and which is less than perfect competition. So yeah, less than perfect competition, oligopolies. Because there's not as much of a poisoning effect, but still some in compared to perfect competition. So the incentive isn't to produce at at the supply demand equilibrium. And then this is just Q, just Q equilibrium. Yeah. Profit per firm increases. Well, there's only one firm. Profit per firm increases because what there's like a specific. Well, I mean, the monopoly is basically taking some of the consumer surplus and turning it into producer surplus. But that's another way of saying increased profit per firm. But why are they doing that? Because they can set the price and not have to deal with the poisoning effect. Right. Okay, so same, yeah. Greater in compared to, well, it's the same, basically. Greater in compared to oligopoly and right? And then this is just so, I mean, because both of these are examples of just taking, I mean, but in both of these, you're just taking some of the consumer surplus and giving it to the producer. And you have increased dead weight loss in the market as you monopolize. Okay, let's see what
96, and the profits for firm are 46.08. I solved that up above.
Oh, okay. So
we know from up here
referring to a previous
that if
example.
they don't monopolize, each firm produces 64. We solved that Carnot problem last time. So the market quantity is 128, and the profits are 4,096, or 12.5% cheaper. I solved that up there.
Less than profit per firm. Quantity. Yeah. And then this is oligopoly, then monopoly. Boom. Really, it's this. I don't know if I needed a whole table for this, but yeah. And profit per firm is, I've got these around the wrong way. Because this is greater, obviously. Greater oligopoly. Yeah, okay, got these around the wrong way. Whoops. Yeah, because monopoly is going to have the most profit per firm. Oligopoly, perfect competition. Yeah.
What about perfect competition? What is the quantity sold in this market in a perfect competition? Everything you need to answer that question is at the very top of the top board. What is the quantity sold in this market in perfect competition? Yeah.
It's just wherever the equilibrium.
192, and how'd you get that? Right. Price equals marginal cost is the key condition for perfect competition. Good answer.
I think he's using, I think this is the graph he's talking about. think.
Price equals marginal cost is the foundation of perfect competition. That means the price is 147. That means the quantity by the demand curve is 192. Same person, what are profits?
Maybe not that one, actually.
Price is 147. Well, price is 147. What's cost? 147. Zero.
147.
Perfect competition leads to zero profits.
Right.
So this is a really important table because look what you see. As the market gets more competitive, more units are sold and profits fall. More units are sold and profits fall. Okay? And the general feature you get, generally true, the oligopoly case will lie between the monopoly and perfectly competitive case. That's generally true. Okay, we can sort of bound the outcome by the monopoly and perfect competitive case. The oligopoly case will be somewhere in between. Okay, questions about this? Why this lines up the way it does? What does this mean for welfare? Well, we could go through, and you were asked to do some of this last night, and calculate the producer-consumer surplus for each of these cases.
Yeah.
Okay, but you had a long night. I won't make you do that. I'm going to teach you a shortcut now that you wish I taught you yesterday, Monday. Okay, the shortcut is, remember, what causes deadweight loss?
Well, whenever I mean, many things. Like, basically, like whenever the whenever the equilibrium isn't being met between supply and demand, in a perfect competition, then you get deadweight loss. And so, like, you know, a oligopolistic market colluding on prices to, you know, to not sell at the equilibrium because they'll have the poisoning effect, would create deadweight loss, because there are some consumers or some buyers missing out on, you know, on buying something when in a completely free market they would have been able to buy the thing. But like, it could, like, that could be caused by many things, like demand shock, supply shock, firms, yeah, like anything less than perfect competition.
Trades that are beneficial to both sides that are not made. Or in other words, deviations from perfect competition.
Yeah.
So we know the answer, that this must be the highest welfare outcome. Because we know from the first fundamental welfare theorem that this maximizes welfare. Guess what? The size of the deadweight loss is proportional to the quantity. In other words, the more
proportional. Well, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, deadweight loss is proportional to the change in big Q, right? Between perfect competition and whatever alternate scenario you're talking about.
The more you shrink the market from the optimal level, the bigger the deadweight loss, the more trades that don't get made. Because look, the structure of the problem, these first two equations, okay, these are the same. The structure of the problem has not changed. So as you shrink quantity, all you do is creating more and more deadweight loss. Because deadweight loss is about trades that aren't made that would be beneficial. Any trade at a price above 147 is beneficial. Any ticket bought in an airline at a price above 147 is beneficial because it wouldn't be bought if the consumer didn't want it.
Can I bold this
and
as
it's
well?
above cost.
How do I bold? Hold on. Oops. Why is... This is weird. Maybe I can't bold latex.
So as the quantity falls, as the price rises above 147, the quality falls below 192. Welfare is going down. Total social welfare is going down. Producer surplus is going up, but consumer surplus is falling faster. Okay? Because deadweight loss is proportional to quantity. The more you restrict quantity from the perfectly competitive case, the bigger the deadweight loss you create. Okay? The more you restrict quantity from the competitive case, the more trades that aren't made that are beneficial. Okay? Questions about that? Okay. That's one point I want to make. The second point I want to make is I want to talk about what happens when you have many firms. What happens when you have many firms?
So, is this somewhere between oligopoly... Oh, I've misspelled that. Oligopoly and perfect competition?
Well, we've talked about one firm, monopoly. We've talked about essentially infinite firms, which is perfect competition. We've talked about two firms, which is Cournot. What about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 firms? What about n's that are between 0 and infinity? Well, it turns out, and you could sort of see this here, that the Cournot equilibrium approaches perfect competition as the number of firms goes to infinity.
Yeah.
The oligopoly model approaches the perfectly competitive model as the number of firms goes to infinity. Firms equilibrium. And you could sort of see this here, that the Cournot equilibrium approaches perfect competition as the number of firms goes to infinity. Approaches perfect competition here, that the Cournot equilibrium approaches perfect competition.
Oh, approaches the... like the equilibrium that would be in perfect competition. So the Cournot equilibrium approaches a perfect competition equilibrium as firms increase to infinity. Yeah, because because Cournot equilibrium is each firm's dominant strategy intersecting, and so but that would be yeah. But I guess there's a way to... Man, the math would be hard, but like there'll be a way to calculate the Cournot equilibrium for, you know, n number of firms. Like seems difficult. The Cournot equilibrium approaches the perfect equilibrium in a perfectly competitive market as firms approach infinity. And some other assumptions, but like that's the main thing.
As the number of firms goes to infinity. The oligopoly model approaches the perfectly competitive model as the number of firms goes to infinity. As the number of firms goes towards 1, it approaches the monopoly model. So the oligopoly covers this whole space depending on the number of firms. Okay? And in particular, you can derive this, but you don't have to. The markup that you get in an oligopolistic market is minus 1 over n times epsilon, the elasticity demand. Remember, the market for monopolies was this without the N. You tested on that last night.
Latex Infinity text. INFTY. Okay. Let's do one.
That was the markup without oligopoly and monopoly. When you add oligopoly, all you do is add the N to that denominator. All you do is add the N to that denominator. And so basically, the markup falls in an oligopolistic market for two reasons. One,
markup falls. I forget. Why does the markup fall? I should be able to remember this without looking at my previous notes. I mean, you've got more firms. I mean, more firms competing, but they're colluding on the price. Well, if they're, well, hold on. No. This is when they're not, because I think this is where they're not colluding, because if they were colluding, then that's forming a monopoly. So where they're not, oligopolistic market is by default assumed to be not cooperating, because otherwise it would be a monopoly, right? So well, I mean, yeah, they have to compete a little bit. If they're not colluding, they need to compete a little bit. But and the well, that's the one reason. What's the other reason? Okay.
Is as the number of firms get large, the markup falls, and thus the profits fall. The other is the elasticity of demand gets large, just like we talked.
Oh, obviously. How could I forget?
Talked about monopoly. The profits fall, the markup falls. So what constrains an oligopolist in this model is both how many firms they're competing with and how elastic the demand is for the good.
Yeah. I should just write that out. Why is it so hard for me to type oligopolist? Oligopolist. Constraints. One, how many firms, number of firms, and elasticity. I'm pretty sure I have this written before, of demand.
Okay.
Why is that coming in red? Oligopolist. The oligopolist. Why can't you say the oligopolist? Oligopolistic. Firm constraints.
So, but it's not only that. N has this is sort of the direct effect of N. There's an indirect effect of more firms too. It's indirect effect.
Okay.
The indirect effect is it's harder to have a cartel the more players there are. So
because like cooperating and making sure everyone else is cooperating and just that coordination difficulty. Right. That makes sense.
And going up not only lowers profits because through this mechanical mechanism, and going up lowers profits because it breaks possibilities for cooperative equilibria. So for example, for a long time, the only two countries that sold mercury on the world market were Italy and Spain. Mercury, like, is in lots of stuff. Okay, Italy and Spain. And they formed a cartel. And they successfully kept prices up like OPEC does for oil now. But then other nations, in particular Russia, started producing mercury, and the cartel broke down because they didn't trust those damn Russians. And they couldn't form a coalition. And the cartel broke down. So the other reason N matters is not just mechanical reason, but the sort of logistical reason that cartels get harder the bigger N gets. And then the last thing this raises is, how do we think about government policy in oligopolistic markets? And in particular, a very rich area of government policy is antitrust policy. Okay? This is a hugely topical issue. Some of you may be reading about the Google case that's going on right now, where MIT's own Mike Winston is the key expert witness for the government. My colleague is the key expert for the government in the Google case. What's the Google case? The Google case is that Google has monopolized the market for search engines, which we all sort of know, right? We Google things, we don't Bing them, okay? So basically, it's easier to say. I'm going to go DuckDuckGo something, which just sound weird, right? Googling, and they have the linguistic advantage as well. And part of the reason they do that came out in this trial, is that they pay Apple $10 billion a year. $10 billion a year to make Google the default search engine on iPhones. And we're all subject to default bias. We all just go with what the defaults are. I mean, you can always switch your search engine, but no one does. And the key question in this trial is, does Google have 92% market share because they've paid off the companies to make them default, or because they're better? Google's just saying, look, we're a better search engine. You wouldn't penalize a company for being better. If we're better, we should get more market share, and that's absolutely true. And that's the incredible difficult part about this case, is the judge has to decide, does Google have 90% market share fairly by just being a better search engine, or unfairly by paying off Apple so no other search engines get a chance? This is an incredibly exciting area of economics. The even bigger case is coming. The Google's just a warm-up, because what's coming next, okay, is the app. Is it Apple or Amazon? I forget which is the next big one. Amazon's the next big one, right? So Amazon, right, of course, when you go on Amazon, of course it's Amazon, you can buy stuff from Amazon Marketplace. So about 40% of stuff that's sold on Amazon is sold on Amazon Marketplace, which is other vendors that come to Amazon and sell on their platform, because it's great, because you Google search engine, Amazon shopping, right? When you want to shop, you go, and then therefore if Amazon doesn't sell, you find these vendors. Turns out Amazon charges these vendors enormous amounts. Amazon takes something like a quarter of the profits they make, some huge amount, and they do all sorts of things like making them pay fees. Where they're listed on the list, they have to pay more to be higher in the list, etc. And the government is suing, saying that that is antitrust behavior because we don't have a competitive market for these firms. Since Amazon dominates online search, they have a dominant position to monopolize the ability of firms to sell their goods. Well, what's the counter-argument? Well, the government's going to say, look at the data. Amazon has more than 50% of the entire online shopping market is Amazon. They're effectively dominate the market. Amazon's going to say, we're something like 8% of the entire market for goods in America. Why should you only consider us competing with online things? We also compete with the Gap. We compete with brick and mortar too. Why should you say we dominate just because we dominate online? These little folks who advertise on us could always just go sell in the Gap or sell in brick and mortar as well. What's the right answer? That's going to be a hard thing a judge is going to have to decide. But that's why this is an incredibly exciting and interesting area. And if you find this interesting, my colleague Nancy Rose worked for the government. She was the government's chief economist doing exactly this for 2 years. And she's teaching 1420. And she teaches you all about how this works and the exciting cases.
Nancy Rose, MIT 1420. See if we can. I wonder if this course is open. Probably not. If it's a more advanced course. But we might be able to. She might have written a textbook or recommend a textbook. What is this? Hmm. Uh, 1420. I wonder. No. Sad. Her edited volume. Economic regulation in its reformed. What have we learned? 2014. There might be an updated one. What's this one? I wonder if there's a newer edition. Maybe we can find NTL Rose Wikipedia. Maybe we can get a list of books. Works. This is the latest one. I mean, because like, especially with what's going on the last 5-10 years, it'd be really interesting to have an updated, read a new book, because it's pretty crazy times. But okay, cool.
And how governments think about this. But it's a very hard and exciting topic, and obviously very topical. Okay? And one thing that this does that's sort of more personal to my research is think about hospital mergers. So basically, if two hospitals want to merge, the benefit is there could be cost efficiencies. So two hospitals are across the street from each other and they want to merge. They could be cost efficient. They could share resources. They could shrink the number of beds maybe so they don't have so much excess capacity, et cetera. On the other hand, they get more market power. So the typical antitrust case, unlike these Amazon and Google cases, which are very exciting right now, the typical antitrust case is a little more mundane, which is when two firms merge, it's a trade-off between efficiencies of merging, returns to economies of scale, versus market power. When two firms merge, it's a trade-off between efficiencies of merging, returns to economies of scale, versus market power.
Why is it versus market power? Aren't those both things positive for the firm? Because like the firm gets more efficient and gets more market power. Why is it a trade-off? I'm confused. I'm confused about why that's a trade-off. Because normally, yeah, like a trade-off implies you're having to sacrifice one for the other, or make a decision between one and the other, right?
And it's
Um. Um. Oh, well, I guess I'm just assuming that the efficiency is increasing because maybe it doesn't. But what is that? What is that part? RTS. Right. Oh, because at some point you might have diminishing returns to scale. That's why it's a trade-off. Well, it I guess it I don't know if it feels a little bit confusing to say it's a trade-off because it would be a trade-off if, well, it would be a trade-off. Let me finish my thought. It would be a trade-off if you're having to trade off if you know that, or if you think that there's going to be diminishing returns to scale, but you're trading that off for increased market power. However, not if not if you have constant returns to scale or increasing returns to scale. If things are staying the same or if things are getting better for you. But maybe like some, well, I guess we are talking about the net effect of the efficiency because we're just measuring in input and output. Because I was thinking that maybe you consider some parts of your firm increasing or diminishing, having increasing or diminishing returns to scale. But then yeah, we're just talking about the net effect anyway. I don't want this to be orange anymore. We're going to keep that as bold. Oops. It's a trade-off between what happens, like, hold on. Let me read. Hold on. I correct them. Returns to scale. Right. All inputs proportionally. What happens to the output? Okay. Like the effects of return to scale and market share, where this is really it's only a trade-off if the effect is a diminishing return to scale. Bad. Well, like, yeah, less output for same input. I didn't need to. I'll remember that. I'll remember that. I'm going to remember this. This is one of the things that I'm going to remember. 100%, definitely.
Essentially, what you have to do is evaluate which of those dominates. So for hospital mergers, for decades, we let hospital mergers go on. We just said, yeah, whatever hospital want to merge, we let them merge.
Oh, I was thinking from the perspective of the firm, but he's talking about like from the perspective of government regulation, right? Where, in general, this is going to be positive because it's going to be either constant or improved efficiency, and so that's a good thing from the government perspective. Whereas the increased market share is a bad thing for all the reasons, the oligopolistic and monopolistic considerations, right?
Said, look, there's just huge efficiencies of scale. Turns out we were totally wrong. When hospitals merge, they don't get efficient at all. They just raise prices. They could get more efficient, but they don't. They just raise prices. So now we're starting to crack down on hospital mergers.
Huh, interesting. Okay. From the POV of the firm, from POV of yeah. Not anyone of not firm. So like well, really society at large, general society.
But that's exactly, once again, the kind of interesting example we talk about in this field. Okay? Now, let me go to the last topic, which I should have, prepped you for more last time because it related to some of the questions I got. Which is I got a lot of questions roughly of the form, why do firms have to set the same prices? We don't think of firms as competing on quantity. We think of firms competing on price. You've got this weird model where American and United compete by deciding how many flights to have. That's not how firms compete. They compete by setting their price. And so you were saying that quantity competition is not the right model. Price competition is the right model. So now let's go to analyzing oligopoly in an alternative world where firms don't compete on quantity and let the market decide price. They compete on price.
Oligopoly.
And let the market decide quantity. Here we move from the Cournot model to what's called the Bertrand model.
Bertrand.
All these French guys got to name the oligopoly models. The Bertrand model is radically different than the Cournot model because the Bertrand model has a simple conclusion, which is with price competition, all you need is two firms, an N of 2, to get to the perfectly competitive outcome. Why?
Why? With price competition, all you need is two firms to get to the perfect competitive outcome. Because they'll just keep lowering their prices to beat the other person. But why wasn't that happening in quantity? Why wasn't that happening in quantity competition? Set of quantities for each firm such that holding other firms' quantities constant, no firm can obtain a higher profit by deviating. Okay. I don't really get it.
If United
I need to think about it a bit more.
in America were in truly price competition, why would you only need two firms like that
Yeah, because they're just going to keep
get
undercutting each
to
other.
perfect competition? Why is that true if they're competing on price, not quantity? Yeah.
Because the assumption is they're willing to produce. Is the assumption? Well, because the problem is. I mean, they must be willing to produce the big Q of the market, right? Each firm. Is that right?
It's the same as our entry logic. Remember entry logic, as long as there are profits, new firms will enter. Well, it's the same logic. As long as there are profits, the other guy will undercut.
Yeah.
So if American starts making profits, United will come in $1 less. They'll still make money. They'll steal the market. So American will come $1 less. That'll continue until price equals marginal cost.
But they don't do that because of the poisoning.
Now, in fact, it won't, right? Nothing's ever that perfect. But theoretically, as long as price is epsilon above marginal cost, the other firm will come in and set price to half an epsilon above marginal cost and take the market. Okay? So basically, the Bertrand model is totally radically different. It's just, look, two firms is perfect competition. Basically, there's monopoly and perfect competition. There's no oligopoly. One firm's monopoly, two firms plus is perfect competition. That is a very radically different prediction, and quite frankly, a lot less interesting. So this raises sort of 2 points. The first point is, well, what's the right model to use? And the answer, roughly speaking, is it depends on the kind of market you're thinking about.
Okay. Okay.
Basically, the answer depends. Basically, price competition is more likely when you can instantaneously meet demand.
Right. Because and that's why it was the airline example for the quantity competition, because there's, there'll be like a huge capital. Well, there'll be like, say you want to ramp up your number of flights that you're flying as an airline firm. You have not only a big lag of time, like it takes a while to just buy the planes, rent out the hangars, figure out when you want to set up the flight, stuff like that, but also capital expenses of buying the plane and stuff like that. Or I guess you could rent them now, but say you have to buy them, as opposed to and so like there's an incentive to like try to optimize for producing a particular quantity, because like if you're constantly changing your quantity, well, you're always like paying a price. There's always a cost in changing the quantity you're producing, scaling up, scaling down. Because like if you scale down your quantity, well, now you have like you have a bunch of planes which you're not using, and so you have to decide whether or not to liquidate them or just keep maintaining them or have them just hanging around in a hangar somewhere, right? And if you scale up, then you have to invest more. Whereas there isn't those problems in price competition. I did a little bit of trading in a game called Warframe, and I'm just thinking about how what that market was like, because like in Warframe, huh. Huh. In Warframe, you had like multiple different markets between players. So like, So if you can, so what's an example where the demand can be instantly met? The thing is, though, in Warframe, the production wasn't really changing much because people. I need to be right back. Interesting. I'll be back in 5:10, Burby. But that's really interesting to think about. Yeah. That would be an interesting video, actually. Just to try to apply what I've learnt to the Warframe market and see. Yeah. Because the Warframe market is very tricky. Anyway, I'll be right back. Be right back. It would, after going through this course and maybe the macroeconomics course, it would be interesting to, I think apply them to the Warframe market as well as the Tarkov market, because those are two markets I've had a lot of experience trading in. Just for fun, really, just to like as a way of applying what I've learned. Because now that I'm thinking about it, the Warframe market is really complicated. Because let me put on my jacket. Because you have real money, and then you have in-game currency, like platinum. And it's very interesting to think about how the value of platinum is affected by the devs, because or is affected by the devs and as well as new players. Because because if the number of items, for example, every person only needs a maximum of 2 max level energize arcanes, right? These are just useful items, but you don't need more than 2, because that, as when I last played years ago, that was the cap that you could apply to any particular. Well, there was no more utility to be gained by having more than 2. And so if the number of people playing the game didn't increase, then the demand would slowly fall as people farmed for the arcanes and sold them to people who needed it, which would gradually lower the price of the arcanes to 0, right? But because there are always new players picking up the game, new accounts needing the arcanes, that has an effect of increasing the price. And but also as the developers add new items that can be purchased or traded for with platinum to the game, that every account wants, every person wants some number of. Well, that's another thing for people to spend their platinum on, which would then increase the value of platinum. Will have an effect of increasing the value of platinum, right? Which would then, what effect would that have on the price of Energized Arcanes, though? Maybe I should just. This would be interesting. Because I think what we'd have to do is pick a particular subset of the market. So the arcane market, or the Riven market, or relics. That'd be very and we can make a video on that too. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Let me put that in my. Let me put that in my notes. Video idea. Analyze subsets of Warframe market and Tarkov market. Warframe. Tarkov markets. Because yeah, it's also interesting because you have a daily trade limit, which is a limit on the number of trades you can make with another player, and each trade can only have a maximum number of item, which varies by item. That's a way for the devs to prevent monopolies, right? Because like, if there was no limit, then it makes it easier for one person to sell everything. And because because you're forced to, in order to make the trade, you're forced to take your character to the other person's clan trading post or whatever, and then that adds friction to the trade, which basically sets a hard cap on the number of trades per day you can make as well, because there's only so much time in the day, and requires both the buyer and seller to be online at the same time. Also has the effect of reducing or making it more difficult for a monopoly to form. Because like say all the trades were like automatic, could be done automatically and frictionlessly basically, and you didn't have to be online at the same time. You could just set the price you want to sell at, and if that price was met, then it would automatically make the transaction. And if there was no limit, then these are like great ways that the devs have sort of protected the ability for new players to still make platinum by trading with other players. Very cool.
Quantity competition is more likely when there's lags. Basically, price competition is more likely when you can instantaneously meet demand. Quantity competition is more likely
instantaneously meet demand. What? Why can't I spell into what? Instantaneously. Instantaneously meet demand.
When there's lags in meeting demand.
And so when applied to the Warframe market, so like I don't know if this is exactly correct, right? Like an exact a good example, but like in Warframe, if the buyer, if the consumer wants to buy 6 of an item, right? Consumer wants to buy 6 of an item, and seller 1 is selling offers 1, right? Seller 2, well, sellers 1 to 6 offer 1 item each. Because there's lag, because in order to make the transaction, there's that friction of actually having to take a character to the other person's clan or trading post and make the trade. And there's a daily trade limit. That's why Seller 7 can offer 6 items at a higher price than sellers 1 to 6, and still get sales. This is what I would do. Because I would like, you would only sell low quantities at low prices when you were like desperate for platinum. But because I was willing to wait, because I had so many goods, I had so many offers, it didn't matter to me that that this option wasn't taken very often by a consumer, because I had like 200 of these types of offers, right? And you could only, and there was only like a daily trade limit of 20 or 30 at the time, which meant I could meet my daily trade limit while being able to sell at these higher prices and make more per trade, because I could sell a higher quantity per trade. And you can actually see this. Warframe market. If we go to here. If we go to Energize. Arcane Energize. And how many do you need for a max? I think it's 10, or is it 20? Is it 10? Or is it 20? Unit price. I think it's 21 now, actually. So normally the lower price will have a lower quantity being offered. Like this guy, but he's doing it because he has a low reputation. But if we didn't include reputations, if you had a higher quantity, hold on, is it 21? 505? I think it is 21. Yeah. But yeah, this guy could get away with selling at 9 or 8 if you want to undercut this guy with a lot. He should be selling at 8 per, if we don't take into account reputation, because some people will prefer to be able to buy a higher quantity per trade rather than just buying the 2. I wonder if we can find another example. Relics should be... Well, they have to be a popular relic, though. No, relics are weird. Arcane... Rage. Yeah. Yeah, here's a good example. So see this guy. This guy is a super experienced trader. Huge rep, right? Which means a lot of trades done. And just ignore from here down. This is like a different item. But like he's selling for when selling individual arcanes, he's selling the most. He's selling the most number at the highest price. And so because you need like 42 of these at most, when I last played at least. You know, someone who has a platinum and wants to buy 42 will look at all these quantities and be like, I really, I could get a better price if I messaged this guy, waited for him to respond, bought from them, messaged this guy, messaged this guy, messaged this guy. And then by the time I buy a few of these, I have to like go through all these 5 people in order to get my 42 arcanes. Or I could, if I'm willing to pay for more plat, I could just buy them all from this guy. Right. And so if we look at his profile, we should be able to see a similar strategy, because I bet down here as well, he's got a similar arcane rage. Oh, he's just doing, okay, so he's just doing, never mind. What about the other arcanes? Whoops. Arcane acceleration. Yep, same strategy again. Because, yeah. Ignore from, this is a different thing. This is where they're leveled up. Very cool. And so, yeah, he's doing what I did. But if he was really clever, this is what I was doing. Not to gloat too much. Is he would have some that are max leveled as well, and be doing the same thing for the max level versions as well as the rank 0 versions. Anyway, cool. Interesting. Okay, I think it would be fascinating to look at the Warframe markets and Tarkov markets just for fun, really, just to help me solidify what I've learned.
Let's think about breakfast cereals versus cars. Breakfast cereals compete on price, okay? Because the truth is, if I'm lower price, all of a sudden people want twice as many apple cinnamon Cheerios. I make them. They're on the shelves the next day. Cars, if suddenly we want twice as many...
Hold on, let me get back.
Breakfast cereals versus cars. Breakfast cereals compete on price, okay? Because the truth is, if I'm lower price, all of a sudden people want twice as many apple cinnamon Cheerios. I make them. They're on the shelves the next day. Cars, if suddenly we want twice as many cars, it takes months to produce them. So they can't just say undercut in price and meet demand. If you undercut in price, you can't meet
demand. Right, that's what we were talking about before with the airline example. Okay.
So they're more likely to compete on quantity. Now, in reality, of course, as always, it's a mix of the two. But roughly speaking, the way to think about it is price competition is more likely in very, very rapid turnaround industries. Quantity competition is more likely in industries with more complicated production processes where there lags. And obviously, nothing's at that extreme, but that sort of is the intuition.
Yeah.
But it's not a very clean distinction. So you really need to know both models. It's just the Carnot model is kind of more fun. Bertrand model is kind of boring. Okay? So that's the first point I want to make.
Kind of boring.
The second point I want to make, which is really interesting, is let's say you are breakfast cereals. You're in the perfect Bertrand competition case. Perfectly competitive. It's easy to create breakfast cereals.
Wrong way. No, this is right.
How do you still end up making profits? What do you do if you're a breakfast cereal company in this Bertrand equilibrium to try to make profits?
On quality.
What can you do?
Advertising.
Yeah. Exactly. You can product differentiate.
Yeah.
Essentially, you can create little monopolies. You could say, sure, there's perfect competition for Cheerios, but now I've invented apple cinnamon Cheerios. And for a while, at least, I have a monopoly in apple cinnamon Cheerios, so now I can go back to making money. Okay? So I'm not choosing cereals at random. It's a great example. So around World War II, there was essentially 3 types of cereal in World War II. Cheerios, Corn Flakes, and Quaker Oats. That was it. Okay? But by 1970, there was more than 150 breakfast cereals to choose from, including ones that are very similar, like apple cinnamon Cheerios. Okay, by 1970s. So, but basically, I'm sorry, let me back up, I said this wrong. 1953 type cereals. By 1970, there were 150 cereals, but it wasn't differentiation. It was that stores had realized they could make generic versions. So they made Oreos, which were Cheerios, a different name, but they were Cheerios, and then they could just sell them. They could sell them at epsilon above marginal cost and make money. So essentially, the cereal companies were not making profits anymore because generic products had been introduced to essentially mimic what they were making. So they product differentiated. In 1989, General Mills introduced apple cinnamon Cheerios. It's less old than you think. Okay, it's before you guys, but well after me. Apple cinnamon Cheerios. Now, when apple cinnamon Cheerios came in, they were delicious, objectively, okay? And there was no good substitute. So they suddenly faced fairly inelastic demand. So they could raise prices above marginal costs. So General Mills, while getting competed to death on regular Cheerios, could suddenly have a highly profitable apple cinnamon Cheerio line. And they patented the apple cinnamon formula. So for a while, there wasn't competition. Now there's generic apple cinnamon Cheerios, but there weren't for the first few years. Okay? So by product differentiating, they ended this death cycle of Bertrand competition. Is that good or bad? Let's come back to welfare.
So good or bad? I mean, in terms of welfare, we always like it when there are more trades happening. And we like it when the consumer has more options. These are like the assumptions, right? And so really, with the firm providing different options, I mean, the consumer can still, I mean, there's nothing stopping the consumer from buying the regular brand. But they have this new option, right? And so more options, better, increase welfare. Generally, in general.
Oh, just
right?
checking your nails. Question? Answer, rather. Is that good or bad?
Generally good.
Well, is it good or bad depends very much on your model. We think it's probably good because of the principle I've talked about, revealed preference.
Yeah.
Which is if people didn't want apple cinnamon Cheerios, they wouldn't buy them.
Yeah.
So you've created in product differentiating, you've created a new product.
Yeah.
That consumers want. Indeed, my colleague, very famous economist named Jerry Hausman, actually estimated that the introduction of apple cinnamon Cheerios raised consumer surplus by more than $75 million a year.
Wow.
Because they had this new thing they wanted. Now, on the other hand, they were paying a monopoly price for it. So we are better off in a world with apple cinnamon Cheerios than without it. But we're still not as good off, not as well off.
As if we had a perfectly competitive apple cinnamon Cheerio market.
If there wasn't more competition providing apple cinnamon Cheerios. So it doesn't mean, in other words, in economists we talked about the first fundamental welfare theorem, the best we can do. We also talk about the second best, which is, well, the best we can do given constraints we live under. So having apple cinnamon Cheerios is the best we could do. It's the second best. We are better off having apple cinnamon Cheerios than not. But the first best would be apple cinnamon Cheerios with a regulated price at the perfectly competitive price, or at least above it enough to invent new products.
Yeah.
So indeed, today, only 5 firms make most cereals. 5 firms. There are 5,000 types of cereal. 5,000. So that raises another interesting issue. So overall, economistic product differentiation is good. We think essentially it's driving variety. People like variety. If they didn't, they would.
Yeah. Driving variety. People don't want the variety. They don't need to pay for it. Yeah.
Wouldn't buy it. That's good. But there's starting to be an interesting question in industrial organization of the problem of choice overload, which is in some sense, do we have too many choices? In economics, we assume more choice is good. That's our fundamental assumption.
Yeah.
But what if now you get to the supermarket, you look at that, you're like, I'm gonna have toast. Okay? Because you're like, I just can't decide. There's so much. Well, you could get to the point where we're actually worse off from that much product differentiation. That wouldn't be in a standard model. That's looking forward to something we'll cover at the next to last lecture we call behavioral economics.
Whoops.
Which I'm so excited about, I dropped my mic. I guess that's a mic drop. So that's in behavioral economics. We'll talk about this. But the point is, the standard economic model would say, at this person correctly answered, more product differentiation is good. But there's two caveats to that. One is it's still not as good as if we had it at competitive prices, just like patents are good, but still not as good at competitive prices. And the second issue is there's a question whether product differentiation can actually go too far, and can you get choice overload? And that leads us to more interesting psychological models of behavior that we'll come to and talk about behavioral economics. Okay, questions about that? Okay, let's stop there, and we will come back next week.
Great. That was a fun one. Nice. Nice. Okay. I feel like my note taking is getting a little bit better. I'm trying to distill a lot more of just what I want to remember. Like, it's very. This is like the huge challenge for me is trying to figure out what I actually want to remember and what I want to have easy access to if I need to review the information. So like, so yeah, this is like note taking goal. I want to have core concepts that I memorize. Right, some super important things that I gotta remember. Memorize plus understand, right? Memorize plus understand plus am able to provide intuitive examples of and plus apply to real world examples, right? That's what I want to have in my active memory. This is what I want to be able to do. But then there'll be like extra stuff that I don't memorize, but is organized. Is organized alongside the core concepts, such that I can quickly review information if needed. Like if we have like a particular paper that I want to read and understand, and I'm like confused about demand elasticity. Well, I'll remember like the basics, but I'll need a way of easily reviewing all of the important information about that if I need that to understand the paper, right? So that's that. Note taking, note summarizing task. That's where my note taking is up to. Yeah. Whoops, close that. Anyway, let's go back down to here. What's our next one? Next one is input market, labor market, labor and capital. Should we do? Let's do the next one and see how my brain holds up. See if we can stay focused. This was really cool. Oligopoly 2. Input markets 1, labor market. Maybe I'm going to go for a quick walk between these two lectures. I'm going to BRB, 5-min walk. And then we'll be refreshed. Yes. It's a good idea. All right, be right back. All right. Let's do it. Labor market.
Right. Today we are going to move on to we're sort of start the second half of the course. The first half of the course was about essentially following up on lecture 1 and deriving demand and supply curves. So you now know and have been painfully tested on how you can come up with demand and supply curves, on how you can take the primitives of consumer preferences and the primitives of production functions and come up with demand and supply curves, how you can use those to draw positive as well as normative conclusions about welfare, and how that works with different kinds of market structure, be it perfect competition, monopoly, or oligopoly. And that is sort of the basics of consumer and producer theory. The second half of the course is essentially applications of that model to various questions that you might have raised as we were thinking through the basics. So for example, the next 3 lectures, will be about factor demand, factor markets. And in particular, we're not just going to take W and R as given, but ask, where do W and R come from? Where does the wage rate and the rate of return on capital actually come from? We just took those as constants when we did producer theory. I just gave them to you. But now we're going to actually derive where do we actually get the wage rate and the interest rate. So we're going to go back once again to the basic model, but dive more deeply. Okay? And in doing so, we're going to get introduced to 2 new fields of economics. One is the field of labor economics, which is the study of labor markets. And one is finance, which is the study of capital markets. So we'll learn about 2 exciting new areas of economics in the context of understanding factor markets. Okay? So we're going to start by talking, and by factors, once again, we mean capital and labor. Obviously, in the real world, there are many factors of production. We're going to simplify them into 2, as we've been doing so far, which is capital and labor. The basic theory of factor demand applies to both. So I'm going to teach factor demand independently of capital and labor. Then I'm going to come back and teach labor supply and then capital supply.
Okay.
So factor demand, so demand for both labor and capital, it's the same model. But labor supply and capital supply are different models, so I'll teach them separately. Okay? So where does factor demand come from? Well, let's start with labor demand, although capital demand would be symmetric. Let's start with labor demand. And let's ask, for a firm deciding whether to employ the marginal unit of labor, they have to consider the costs and the benefits of that marginal unit of labor. So what is the cost of a marginal unit of labor? Well, the cost of marginal labor, the marginal cost of the unit of labor is the wage. That's what it costs you to have the marginal unit of labor. Okay, you have to pay, if you want to hire 1 more hour of labor, you got to pay the wage for that hour. What's the marginal benefit? Well, the marginal benefit has 2 components. First of all, the marginal benefit depends on the marginal product of labor. If you hire 1 more unit of labor, how many more goods will you produce? Okay? So the cost is what it is, the wage, the benefits of marginal product of labor. We can't stop there. Because firms don't care about units of goods. Firms care about revenue.
Well,
so the marginal benefit of hiring another unit of labor is the product of...
Hold on. Revenue is price minus marginal cost. Profits. Revenue costs. Oh. But at the end of the day, you're caring about profits. Well, I guess you're caring about it all. The firm is.
Of the marginal product of labor revenue. So the marginal benefit of hiring another unit of labor is the product of the marginal product of labor times the marginal revenue of 1 more unit of good.
But wouldn't it be profit? because say in hiring one more person, you need to you need to increase your capital costs by like in hiring let's say hiring 10 more people, you need to increase your capital costs because you need to have another building and much more equipment, and then you also increase your marginal costs because you have to pay rental taxes or whatever, ongoing costs on that on that property. And so really it isn't a profit, it's not revenue, because like the revenue could be you could have increased revenue, but then maybe you're making no profit on that on that marginal unit of labor. I don't get it. I don't know. Question. Why is the firm not concerned primarily with MPL and profit rather than MPL and MR? Because MR might be increased without an increase in profit, because there might be because in some scenarios MR might be increased without an increase in profit, and yeah, I guess that's my question.
So if I hire one more unit of labor, I get one more unit of output, and then that output itself has a marginal revenue. So think about this in a simple case. Think about this in a perfectly competitive market.
Okay.
In a perfectly competitive market, then the marginal benefit unit of labor is marginal product of labor times the price.
Yeah.
So what's another unit of labor worth? It's worth how much that worker can produce at times how much I could sell it for.
Yeah.
In a perfectly competitive market, the marginal benefit equals the marginal product of labor times price. So essentially what this says for a competitive market, if you set marginal
I don't even know where we'd go for an answer, because I don't want to. I worry about trusting the AI, but marginal benefit of a firm L and let's just see. Demand for labor, balance economics. We might have to pull up the textbook. Is this assuming? Maybe it's assuming the marginal cost, and maybe it's just assuming the cost is constant, and maybe I didn't. Maybe like that's such an obvious assumption that you didn't need to say it, right? Well, hold on. Because there's the marginal cost of the wage. But like marginal cost for say other things that aren't wage, like building rent, maybe, aircon, parking utilities, stuff like that. But yeah, if we assume that the only marginal cost we're considering is that might be changing is wage, and everything else is constant, then we're only concerned about the marginal revenue. That must be it. Do I have any econ friends? I need like a friend who is a econ, who's done an undergrad in economics or something. Because I don't want to just query the AI, but let's see. Let's finish this, and I'm sure we'll figure it out.
The marginal cost.
Let me put possible answer. The cost is assumed. The costs other than wages are assumed constant. Therefore, only need to worry about marginal revenue.
You want to set the marginal product of labor.
Okay, we'll go back.
So essentially what this says for the competitive market, if you set marginal benefits equal to marginal costs, you want to set the marginal product of labor times the price equal to the wage. And that's how you decide how many workers to hire.
Hold on.
This margin produce simple case. Think about this in a perfectly competitive market. In a perfectly competitive market, then the marginal benefit of labor is marginal product of labor times the price.
Marginal product of labor, right, times the price. Right. Yeah, just how much more is being produced. Let me, do I have this here somewhere? MPL, marginal benefit. Do I have not? I do have this marginal product of labor. Okay, so I don't need to rewrite that. Okay, good. Yeah. PC. Yeah, marginal product. So how much is being produced by? Whoops. The price. Yeah, by the price. Yeah. Which is, so this is, yeah.
So what's another unit of labor worth? It's worth how much that worker can produce at times how much I can.
Yeah. How much that worker can produce times the price per unit produced. Yeah.
Sell it for. So in a perfectly competitive market, the marginal benefit equals the marginal product of labor times price.
Yeah.
So essentially what this says for the competitive market, if you set marginal benefits equal to marginal costs.
If you set marginal benefit equal to marginal cost, marginal benefit well, this is MB equals marginal benefit in a perfectly competitive market, marginal benefit. This is a marginal benefit. And so if we set marginal benefit equal to marginal cost, then we're making the most, we're marginal benefit. we're maximizing then like marginal benefit is how much you're getting for the next input of labor in this case. And if we set it to marginal cost, then basically we're saying once the marginal benefit, once we don't get any. Oh, and that's where profits come into account, because like if the marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost, then we're going to employ people up to the point where employing any more people wouldn't generate any more profit. Because if the marginal benefit was now like, because while the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, then we stand to make a profit by employing more people. And so when the marginal benefit is equal to and so if the marginal benefit is ever lower than marginal cost, then you should reduce the labor input.
You want to set
Okay.
the marginal product of labor times the price.
Marginal product of labor, which marginal benefit, times the price.
Equal to the wage.
Equal to the, right. Yeah, because the wage is the marginal cost. Okay. So set MB equal to MC because if the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, then by increasing the labor input, the firm will make a profit. Up to when, and therefore if the marginal benefit, I'm just writing this is going to be something, if I get confused about this in the future, I'm writing this as an easier way for me to remember. If the marginal benefit is equal to the marginal cost, if then there will be no profit made by increasing labor input. Yeah. Okay. And because MB equals this. Oops. Paste equals this, and MC equals wage. I don't know if that's a capital or lowercase w. I don't think it matters. Therefore equals wage. Therefore this is where let me put this here. So that there. Step. And this is where this is the goal of the firm in order to maximize profits by like by altering the labor input. So this is what the firm this is us deriving wage law labor. Right. This is us deriving how the demand of labor.
And that's how you decide how many workers to hire.
Mm.
You basically hire workers until their benefits, which is the value of what they produce, equals their cost, which is their wage. Okay? Once again, pretty straightforward when you think about it.
Yeah.
So basically, the value of a worker is determined by how productive that worker is or how many units she can make, times what those units sell for. Another hour of labor making computer chips is more valuable than an hour of labor making potato chips, because computer chips sell for more than potato chips. Okay? So basically, the labor you produce is more valuable if the goods sell for a higher price.
What time is it?
A great way to illustrate this, and I'm sorry for my pro sports bias here, is to think about basketball players. Okay? Think about the National Basketball Association as a set of a set of firms that are trying to deliver the best basketball products. So you're a firm, you're a team in the NBA, and you are trying to figure out how to set your payroll to maximize profits. You're trying to decide who to hire on your team. You have 12 slots. You're trying to decide who in those 12 slots you want to hire to maximize your profits.
Right, we don't need that anymore.
Okay? So what you really want is you want to ask, well, what's the marginal product of the next player times the value of that product? Well, the marginal product is the number of wins they produce. So you want to ask, how many wins will a player add to my team?
Cool.
And the value is how much more money I'll make per win they add.
Yeah.
Okay? The worst basketball teams do not make as much money as the best basketball teams. So basically, by hiring a player,
I think got some static in my microphone. I have an idea of what the problem is, and I've been waiting for it to come back, and I'm going to test. I'm going to troubleshoot it, but I need an end stream for that. Let me see if it continues. Hopefully it wasn't just short. I've been waiting for like a week for it to come back. I'm going to end stream, and hopefully it continues so I can troubleshoot it. But when we come back, I might be back later today or tomorrow. We'll continue this from 7 minutes. This is awesome. But yeah. Oh, I think it's gone. Damn. Damn. Is it? Oh, darn. I think it's a power, electrical fluctuations. Some problems with power supply. So I wanted to test it with plugging my microphone into a laptop, running just purely running it off the battery and seeing if that fixes it. And if so, then I'll buy an UPS. Oops, close that. Darn, I think it's gone. Damn. Okay, I'm going to end it anyway, and I'll get set up to troubleshoot that. But yeah, when we come back, it'll be from 7 minutes. That Oligopoly 2 was really cool. I enjoyed that one.